Hello. What I'm going to try to do today is show you how I am going to attach to my house a Nestcam security camera. When I first started researching, I went through and I looked at the various options it really came down to the Arlo and then also the Nest. I ended up going with the Nest due to just general better reviews. And so once I purchased my Nest, and I'd already been thinking a little bit about where I was going to mount it outside of my home. Primarily we did this because we had some folks coming around the house recently, like, doing some little pranks and that kind of thing, so I thought I'd put those out there. But anyways, I have a couple locations that I've scouted out that I'm going to put the Nest Cam up, but I knew going into this I was probably going to have some issues with location and how I was going to plug in and power up the Nest Cam. The primary thing that had initially me leaning towards the Arlos were the Arlos are completely wireless, so you can mount the cam outside and you don't have to worry about power because they're battery operated. But again, I ended up going with the Nest. I found that the reviews were better, and I imagine if you're watching this, you probably have been doing some of your own homework as well on that. So my whole goal here is not to go through the pros and cons of the Nest Cam, but to kind of show you how I plan on setting this up. And this is something I looked and I searched and researched, and I couldn't find too many online tutorials where people had mounted the Nest Cam without wiring it with the AC plug that it comes with. I didn't want to use the AC plug, even though I have reasonably close to the locations where I'm going to mount some plug-ins. My thought on this was that the AC plug is kind of out in the open, and it's an area that's very accessible, and so if you knew somebody had a cam, it would be easy to defeat the camera by simply unplugging it real quick, and the camera's useless at that point. And based on one of my locations, I think somebody could do that without actually showing up on the camera, so that was going to be a big problem for me. So anyway, what I decided to go with, and this is something I did after research, and this is kind of something new to me, is I decided to power my Nest Cam with power over Ethernet, or PoE as it's known. I'm not going to make any claims that I am a tech guy. This is all things I've researched. I've talked to some folks who are in the tech world that I know, and also made some phone calls to some companies, and came up with what I'm hoping will work. In addition, my big goal, number one, was to have the Nest Cam up where it couldn't easily be defeated simply by unplugging the AC cord. And the other was to make sure that it didn't detract from my home after it was mounted. I wanted something that looked nice. So again, this is the Wi-Fi Texas PoE injector. So this will plug into AC. There's a little adapter to plug in there. It comes with this. And then on this side is the outlets for your power over Ethernet. So what this will do is and I'll take my little demonstration homemade plug here, which please don't criticize me if you use these things more often. This is my first time really making them, and I'll hopefully get better at it. So you'll plug into excuse me, the PoE, and this will then transmit voltage along the line. And then on the other end, where the camera is going to come in, this is another device made by Wi-Fi Texas, and there may be other companies out there, but this is the company that I found that did it. And it's basically a converter. So what this is going to do is, again, without getting too technical here, is it's going to take the power coming over that PoE injector and taking it down to, well, I guess for lack of a better way of saying it will be Nest Cam friendly, of an output of 5 volts. And so that will then plug into this side. That's where you're going to input your power over Ethernet cable, which I'll be making as I go along. And then this end actually has a USB adapter. And with that USB adapter is going to hook into the Nest Cam, and that is where I'm going to get my power from. Now, the downside of this is I've got a lot of leftover cordage that I don't want just, hanging out there on top of my siding or anything like that. So my goal was to come up with something that I could trim out that would be able to hold excess power, maintain some waterproofing or weatherproofing. I'll say. I really don't say it was waterproof because where it's going to be hung, it won't be too big an issue, but additional weatherproofing, and also look nice. And that has taken me quite some time to actually come up with something. I didn't want to use just a regular old metal junction box. I didn't think that would look good. So for a while I messed around and researched and stopped and went to several home stores, which we don't have a whole lot of choice in my area, but ended up finding a vinyl J block. I think they're called trim block. Anyway, this is what I found. And this is something I found at Home Depot. I'm pretty sure Lowe's would have something that's very, very similar to this. But I had found an earlier one that I thought I was going to use, but this one I thought fit my application much better. One, because it's a little deeper, and I'll go into a little bit later why I wanted something a little more depth, but long story short, it's going to house the additional cord, and it has to house this adapter for the USB. So I needed something that had enough size to it to house that comfortably, so I wasn't just cramming it in there, but also I want something that looked nice. And so the second part I had to figure out was how it was I was going to mount the Nestcam to this and still, maintain something that is reasonably weatherproof and hopefully, kind of bug proof too. I think that that's another issue is I don't want, end up, a bunch of spiders creating the nests in there, or worse yet, a wasp or something, and I go to fix my camera someday and stick my hand in there and get lit up. So what I did was, this has a little internal box in it, but it actually pops out. And so what I did is, I went ahead and popped that out. And here's what it's going to look like on the back side. Kind of give you an idea, I will be fitting the excess cam cordage and the adapter. It will fit in there. I've tested that a few times. I'm just kind of cramming it in there for a quick purpose, but it does fit in there. It's not super snug, but it's not just a ton of extra room, but I think it'll be fine. So this will mount directly underneath my siding, so that will give me a clean look. So in part, you're gonna, this will kind of show. But my other problem was what to do about this area. So what I did is I found a metal junction box plate, and I simply screwed some holes into it, or drilled some holes into it, so this will screw on. Sort of give it a bit more of a finished look. I'm actually going to mount the magnetic part of this to this plate, so it'll sit somewhere, something like that, and then of course the cam goes on that and you can adjust your area. And I'm going to spray paint this so it's a really close color to that, and I think that'll give me some overall cleaner appearance on this. It'll have a little bit of weatherproofing because there is a little bit of a foam backer that goes on this. It'll help seal some stuff out of that. If you notice down here at the very bottom, I had to make a little notch, and that is because at the bottom of the cam you have an attached cord that doesn't detach, and so there's got to be a second, or there's got to be an entry point into this back area. So what I did was I just notched this out. It's a little roughish, but it, once I looked at it last night, once I put this on and the cord actually comes through, it's pretty good. It doesn't, you can really tell, and I think where this is going to be mounted at, you're really not going to notice it. So the big benefit of going with this, I think, for me is that I would still have accessibility to the inside and all the cordage for the camera. If there were something that wasn't working, I could simply remove this, have access to everything inside there, check all the connections. As I run the power cord up from what's going to start in my basement and come up through up around my front porch area, and then run it along the trim and hide all the wires, my goal is to come into probably somewhere here in the underside with a hole and feed this wire in. And again, the overall goal is there will be no wires showing. It will be a clean look. The only thing you'll see is this main wire slightly feeding through here. And so otherwise, it may not look professional, but I think it will look better just simply screwing this camera screwing this up there and having cordage everywhere. That was what I really wanted to avoid. And so I'll pick back up here, showing you some different steps along the way, and hopefully before the day is over it's a finished product. Again, I want to make a disclaimer, I'm not an electrician, I am not a carpenter. I've worked a little with some vinyl siding, so I'm certainly not a master of technique when it comes to that, but I think I can pull this off. I'm going to give it a shot and we'll see. Okay, so the hole I drilled from my porch area through into my basement, and the basement is where the power over internet or Ethernet injector is going to be to get the power in there. So this is still all rough. Once I pull the cord up through to the outside and run all the links I need and hook everything up, and of course at the very end I'll put some silicone on that outside hole in the porch to make sure it's weather tight. And this has foam on the inside, but I may spray a little foam in there when it's all final just to tighten it up a little bit. So this is where we ended up. Extreme close up out here. There's my hole coming up from the basement. I'm going to run this wire up under this, up in through this channel here. I said I'll put some weather seal on that, although it's going to be sealed pretty good just from the fact that it's going to be completely covered by this siding when I pop it back in place, but I'll still do that as a precautionary. Sometimes when I power wash, there's a chance maybe some water can get down in the basement. So this wire will run from the mounting position of the camera down to where I'm going to have the power over Ethernet injector setup. So this is the location. It's going to be up top of a kind of a half circle window looking out onto my front porch area. I've used something like that. Got my hole pretty much made. Probably did that the hard way and didn't completely take the siding out and do it from the ground, but I've got it so it'll fit in there pretty tight, and I'll fasten it in. But before I fasten it in, I'm going to try to set things up so I can go ahead and test everything out and make my connections. I'm going to try to do that from the ground if possible, then put it up for the final. So what I did on my box here, again, I'm going to be putting the cords on the inside of this, but I need to have access, so I'm going to be running my Ethernet cable up this, and it probably just comes straight up that way. I don't know if I'll work behind the siding or not, but I need access into the box. So what I did is I drilled a 3/4 inch hole into the box, and I put just a little rubber grommet there that'll help keep it from one, again, weather tight, two, make sure it doesn't get rubbed raw or anything somehow and cause a loose connection or something like that. So that's how I did that. I think it was ended up with like a 3/8 inch, I think maybe it was, rubber grommet I got at a hardware store, but that pulls snug, but it pulls through there. So I'm gonna go ahead now and probably do a test. Go ahead and put everything in. Okay, so I've got my excess cable running from the entry hole coming over here. Of course, I got a big mess. I got to clean out this area that I'm going to end up mounting this POE injector somewhere in here. I may put another horizontal board or something in there. But anyway, I want to do a test run now. So I've got it plugged in. There is power. So I'm going to plug in one end of the extra long cable I just spliced. I left a lot of extra because once I get my cable actually fastened everywhere I want it, I'll trim this back and make the final plug-ins and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop this into, let's do it in POE 1 right here. See if I can get that to pop in. Okay. So this should be live now. I'm going to run upstairs and get on the other end where I have a terminal and plug it in and plug the camera in, see if it works. Okay, so far so good. I came up here, I'm just doing again a test run, get some better light in there. Plugged in my excess cable, it's coming up, it's going to eventually be up there, and I'll make it all tight and neat towards the end. Plug that in. I've got a green light, pick up my Nestcam, and it's got a green light, which means it's hooked up. I'm actually going to get off here now and check my Nest app and make sure it's all showing up. But if that's the case, then I'm probably going to get, hopefully in like my last mode here of cleaning up, mounting this block, get everything all tight down in the basement. I still got a little bit of time. Frankly, it's an all afternoon project, pretty much all day by the time I went to the stores, but so far so good. Okay, so kind of getting a little bit closer here. I've got the camera mounted to my box. I just have to feed everything into the back here. A couple quick notes. I've got some exposed metal here, and so I just want to make sure outside exposed metal here. I didn't want to create any arcs or anything. I know it's low voltage, but that may still occur. I'm not a big, again, not an electrician, but I thought it's better safe than sorry. So I went ahead and wrapped up any connections that could come undone, areas where metal might be exposed, so as we don't create any problems in there. I don't think I'm going to have to worry about any rubbing because it shouldn't be moving. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and move on now to try to start putting things in the box and maybe try to mount her up there, then start my final cord runs. Okay, so I've got everything stuffed in there now. You can see it's you know, there's a little bit of room. It's not what I would call loose, but I certainly wouldn't say it's so crammed in there that maybe things are bent up too much. Hopefully at least not. I've got my connection coming here. So the tricky part's going to be when I go to mount this to make sure that not much moves inside that box. That might be kind of difficult, but it may take some steps to kind of fasten that in. Got some ideas I may pursue. Okay, well, that's pretty much how it's up. I mean, going up and looking at that, there's one small wire coming up. There just wasn't really any way around that. I don't think I could have, due to how that block fits so close to the siding. I don't think I could have put it under the siding physically and had that works. But anyway, I tested the camera. Camera seems to work fine. I'll kind of go around, show you, there's no wires. Looking at my J channel here, so it's kind of hidden. All I have to do is put that little piece of siding there at the bottom, back in the J lip there, and all that's going to be hidden, and there's my Nest camera. Now I'm just going to head downstairs. I'm going to take up the excess wire slack, staple everything down like it's supposed to, fastened so it's code-ish, and then probably mount my POE injector somehow, and that should be good to go. If there's any questions you have, put on there. I'll be happy to answer it. Again, this was probably the hardest part, the longest part of this whole process was the research. I researched this. I'm kind of a research nut. Amazon reviews, online, anything I could find. That's why I went with the Nest. Bought some nice outdoor Cat 6 Ethernet cable for the POE, and again, Wi-Fi Texas, I think it is, with the two hookups that I mentioned earlier. Give them a try. This is not a plug for them, other than the product seems to work. I know it's one other thing I might mention. Again, this is weather pretty well reserved from the weather. I've got a lot of overhang. That's not going to get wet unless I'm power washing or something. But heat, I did check with Wi-Fi Texas, and they said that USB adapter that's taking that down to 5 volts is rated to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, and so it does get hot here where I live, but it's rare that it gets over 100. It did a few years ago. We had several days, but if I noticed it was getting, if they're calling for a massive heat wave and it's gonna be like 108 or 10, which rarely ever happens here, but if it did, honestly, I'd probably just unplug the cam for a couple days just to not have to risk messing around, having something overheat and having some problems. So anyway, again, thanks for joining me. I hope that my research, or at least what I've done here, can save you some time and give you some ideas.